At the beginning of this season, I knew I would be covering a brand new era for Formula 1. It was a perfect place to start, and I knew that some of the things that might happen will be very important. I guess some part of me was naive enough to believe that those would be things that will only affect a weekend, a month, few races, a season at best. But we arrived in China, and let's just say that new history has been written and new records have been set. Now that I'm writing this script, or, reading it, I realize that I get to be part of something that might be talked about years from now, decades even. Or will it? Because as always, whenever there's a remarkable achievement being completed, there are voices denying it. So, what happened? Hey everyone, this is Tank, and I don't exactly fancy sprint weekends. Why? Well, there's many reasons and only so much time I wanna spend on this intro, so let's just say that sprints usually aren't too exciting as there isn't enough at stake, especially for the backrunners. The prospect of crashing your car just before qualifying for the main race, where there's many more points to score, greatly outweighs the potential gain in a 30-minute sprint. I don't want my Formula 1 potato to be half-baked. Then again, the new season already got quite the reputation for having too many overtakes, so maybe this one will hit different? I don't know, let's see. We only get one practice session in the sprint weekend, so it matters twice as much. Thrice. This time it started with an awfully familiar spin. Franco Colapinto locking his rear axle in almost exactly the same fashion as Max Verstappen did in Australia a week prior. Thankfully, this time it was just a little turnaround with no real consequences other than maybe some burned rubber. He had to quickly get out of the way as the track got populated very fast. With just 60 minutes of practice time, everyone wanted to get out on track, but not everyone could be on a fast lap at all times, which got Isaac Hadjar unnecessarily angry. Track got populated to the extreme at which Norris and Hamilton collided. It was more of a misunderstanding between the world champs, caused by Lewis slowing down before picking up speed in the last corner. Oh, and while we're at Ferrari, exciting news! They brought back the rotating rear wing! Only this time, it became a problem. See, for the rotating wing to work, the driver has to deactivate it slightly sooner than with the usual wing for the rotation to complete. Otherwise, the grip would not be there when the car begins to turn. Hamilton showcased this very nicely, as early in the session he made this exact mistake. But that's more of a little inconvenience. Meanwhile, Arvid Lindblad had actual major issues, as his cockpit filled up with smoke, causing a prolonged yellow flag period. The length of which annoyed me beyond any boundaries, just because it was taking so long. Throwback to preseason testing where I pointed out that future issues with those electric cars would make cleaning them a nightmare. The same thing could happen to Franco Colapinto, but thankfully it didn't. The Argentine encountered a problem of his own and stopped in the pit lane, forcing the Alpine mechanics to run all the way from their garage to where he parked the car. Poor lads got their workout in just to see Franco finally restart the vehicle and drive away just as they almost got to him. Probably felt bad, but I had a solid giggle out of it. The session ended with Russell once again at the top, followed by Antonelli, two McLarens, both Ferraris, and somewhat unexpectedly, Oliver Bearman. The Brit had a pretty good training session and kept a solid pace that even got him ahead of third at the flag Norris at times. He did end it with a spin, which nature remains a true mystery to me. Just as he was applying the throttle, his car just turned around. Also a good session for Aston Martin, as they got 38 laps in and no real issues, giving me that tiny little bit of hope they are starting to understand the package they've got. Quick transition to the next session, the sprint quali. Of course, not the whole grid was taking part. Sergio Perez carried a fuel system issue he got in free practice and couldn't compete. I wouldn't bet on Cadillac making it out to SQ2 anyway, but it's sad that he didn't even get a chance to prove me wrong. Or at least gather more data if nothing else. SQ1 was unexpectedly quiet. Sure, we've had Nico getting a great time as well as Isaac Hadjar beating Verstappen on their first runs, but the longer the session went on, the less excitement and changes we have seen. It might be due to the last sector being mostly straights where not much harvesting can be done. And that reminds me, The engine sound on those straights? Awful. It was so bad, camera directors decided to cut away from onboards at the most suspiciously convenient moment, just before the electric engine started dying out. That was still good 300 to 400 meters before the drivers had to stomp on the brakes. Ugly. Before the session got to a close, Bortoleto got a little too aggressive on the entry into the last corner and had to overshoot it to compensate, depriving him of the last attempt at a better time. Subtle foreshadowing for later sessions. There was a chance for someone from the drop zone to eliminate the Brazilian, and although all of them tried, none could best the time set by Gabi. Both drivers for Williams, Cadillac and Aston Martin were eliminated in a session topped by Russell, with Hamilton and Leclerc less than 2 tenths away. SQ2 was much more of a surprise. Max Verstappen took a trip through the gravel in the last corner, most likely due to still being mad at Gasly for taking way more of the racing line than ideal for the Dutchman. Add to it the fact that Hadjar did not really get a great lap in, and the door to eliminate both Red Bulls from SQ2 was wide open. Wide open to none other than the sister team, the Racing Bulls. In the end, neither Lawson or Lindblad were able to answer the call of SQ3, so both V-Carbs and Audis, accompanied by Ocon and Colapinto, were eliminated, and once again it was Russell who topped the session. The last hurdle was the SQ3, where 5 drivers got 2 runs and the other 5 opted for just 1 attempt. No one could topple Mercedes, with the Briton getting a bragging rights in the 1-2 with Antonelli. Norris and Hamilton completed the second row, and Gasly made a big statement, putting his Alpine to 7th, ahead of both Red Bulls and Berman. In a blink of an eye, things were ready for the sprint. In what I'm going to call a classic fashion for this season, we didn't get all 22 cars on the grid at the start of the sprint. Alex Albon relegated to a pit start after a change of suspension. But onto the race itself. Everything I will tell you right now is going to be pure chaos, just like the start was. It was a perfect getaway for both Ferraris once again. Hamilton stole the lead from Russell and Leclerc settled for 3rd. On the other hand, we've had Antonelli and Verstappen completely bogging the start. The Dutchman falling as low as 20th by turn 2, and the Italian from 2nd to 8th in the same fashion, though he added driving into the side of Hadjar as a sprinkle on top, awarding him a 10-second penalty later on. Lindblad, distracted by Colapinto late on his brakes, spun around just few corners later. Poor Nico Hülkenberg was in the worst possible spot for both of those incidents and fell all the way to 20th, having to avoid the carnage. Antonelli quickly started mounting a comeback with quick passes against Berman and Gasly, while his teammate and his teammate's ex-teammate battled for the lead of the race. This pulled Leclerc into the fight, giving us a thrilling 3-car scrap, ultimately won by George, who pulled away and was never seen again. It wasn't the end of it though, as the prancing horses had themselves to battle, and those historically always end well. But surprisingly, after Leclerc got the maneuver done, nothing really imploded within the team, which is nice, because a much scarier threat was now looming in the distance. The threat being a Mercedes of Kimi Antonelli, who dispatched both McLarens in the span of 3 laps and was now after the red cars. Slightly behind, Lawson showed that he got a point to prove and performed a perfect up and under on Isaac Hadjar, and then added Berman to the list for a good measure. Then actual chaos ensued, as we had overtakes from Antonelli, Verstappen, Ocon and Sainz, while Lindblad retired, Bottas retired, Hülkenberg broke down, and a safety car was deployed. Everything all at once, and amazingly, none of the Astons were involved in any of this. The race changed from 0 to 1 pit stop strategy or trying to hold on to the hard tires. The biggest winner on paper being Liam Lawson, running 5th, some 8 positions higher than he started. But there were 3 laps to go, and with Antonelli just serving his penalty, the top could still change. And change it did, but not thanks to the 19-year-old. Sir Lewis Hamilton managed to overtake Lando, who stole the 3rd spot during the flurry of pit stops. Slightly behind, Ocon managed to win this chapter of the French war against Pierre Gasly and take 9th, but they were both simply an obstacle for Verstappen, who started his chase after the last point-scoring position. At the front, no one was really on Russell's level. Once George had some space, not even the safety car could prevent his dominant drive. Leclerc and Hamilton took the medals for 2nd and 3rd, and then it was Norris, penalized Antonelli, Piastri and Lawson who managed to survive on his hard tires. Surprisingly yet again, both Aston Martins finished the sprint, though ahead of only Sergio Perez. Truly a chaotic session, and we still had a proper quali and race to go. First quali runs saw Piastri lead the way before Hülkenberg, Bortoleto and Norris. If you're raising your eyebrow at those results, let me give you some more context. Mercedes kept their drivers in the pits for a while longer, and the Audis were on the brand new tyres, while both McLarens set their times on used softs. To the credit of German outfit, they produced some solid laps. But when Mercedes finally turned up for competition, Russell and Antonelli took the 1-2 away from the others. Cadillacs, Aston Martins and Williamses were fighting for survival. You can't deny that they have tried, but Colapinto and Bortoleto both made sure that these 6 don't progress to Q2. Last time I praised Perez for qualifying ahead of Bottas, so now Valtteri earns bragging rights by being 1.5 seconds faster. Cadillac might not have much, but they fight one another with all they got. Q2 in the first runs wasn't too crazy, as Mercedes fought against Ferrari for the provisional pole, with Berman and Gasly on great laps, while the Audis and Racing Bulls were in the drop zone. The one to look out for became Oscar Piastri, just 4 thousandths ahead of Hülkenberg and being eliminated. That forced McLaren's hand a little bit, sending him out early just to make sure he is safely through to the next part of qualifying. That was a great decision as he improved to 6th and avoided a yellow flag in the last corner. Gabriel Bortoleto one-upping his own effort from SQ1, this time sending it all the way to the barrier. He got going again, but not before destroying the laps for both Racing Bulls and Hasses. That meant that Audis, V-Carbs, Ocon and Colapinto were out. This session, however, was not topped by Russell for the first time since FP2 in Australia. It was Kimi who took the bragging rights in Q2, giving everyone hope that he can in fact become a pole sitter. Q3 changed that hope into an actual opportunity, as almost instantly Mercedes of George Russell stopped with an issue. The Brit stuck in one gear managed to limp back home, but the door to pole was swung wide open for the Italian. He started with 1:32.3, to which both McLarens answered with times 2/10 slower. Russell watched nervously, hoping to all that is holy that his car will be fixed in time to give him at least one attempt, and his prayers were answered. With just 2 minutes on the clock, Mercedes managed to get him going. Meanwhile, Norris, Leclerc and Antonelli all set a different purple sector before slotting 5th, 3rd and 1st respectively. With Hamilton, Piastri and Gasly completing the even spots, everyone waited for George to complete his lap. He was the only one left who could deny his teammate a historical pole. And he didn't. And at just 19 years of age, Kimi Andrea Antonelli got his first pole position, becoming the youngest ever to do so in history of Formula 1. Kimi himself was not too ecstatic about that.
That's a pole position, mate.
Yeah, let's go, man. Woo.
I believe there is a reason for that. When you add more context, it becomes less and less of an unreachable height and shrinks down in size. Antonelli currently has the fastest car by a long shot. George's problem led to him having a lot less time and preparation than ideal. This turned into pressure, only slowing him down. Put that into perspective with Sebastian Vettel, who at the ripe age of 21 got the Toro Rosso, which was the 6th best car on the grid, to the front of the field, on a chaotic, wet weather qualifying that saw the most experienced of drivers make mistakes. His teammate Sebastian Bourdais had the same opportunities and only managed 4th. One could say that Vettel was 1 in a million, while Antonelli was bound to happen at some point. But record is set nonetheless, and I wouldn't take anything away from Kimi. He did everything right and got his maiden pole. The question was now, can he convert it into a victory just like Seb did? Early on Sunday we got a confirmation that conflict in the Middle East escalated to the point where it was no longer safe to plan races in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. The F1 calendar now completely skipping April. What else are we gonna lose? Oh, I know! How about 4 drivers from this race? Albon, Bortoleto, Piastri and the current world champion, all with problems rendering them unable to even take part. So again, welcome back to 2026. We have 22 cars, but don't start the race with all of them on the grid. maybe next time. Japan, we are counting on you. I have to say that the start of the race proved that sprint is nothing else but a regular race, just smaller in size. Ferraris with an insane launch off the line, Hamilton taking the lead, Verstappen dropping positions like they were hot, and a Red Bull family driver spins on their own. Everything is the same, but this time it wasn't Lindblad, but rather Isaac Hadjar, who lost traction and every single position in the race. But where the big Red Bull struggled, the sister team flourished. Lawson and Lindblad immediately capitalizing and jumping to 7th and 8th respectively. I have to commend Sainz and Alonso for a solid start, overtaking cars and slotting to 10th and 11th, but as you can imagine, this didn't stand for very long. Just like Hamilton's lead, as by lap 4 he was already passed by both Mercedes drivers, and now Russell set off after Antonelli. Meanwhile, VCARBs kept us entertained with a nice duel between their drivers. Liam, afraid of losing time battling his teammate, forced the hand of his strategist and started the first round of pit stops. Worst possible timing for anyone who did manage to pit, as just 60 seconds later, Aston Martin of Lance Stroll stopped on the track and the safety car followed immediately. Antonelli managed to keep the lead ahead of Colapinto and Ocon, who stayed out during the safety car procedure. You can't spell restart without start, meaning that Ferrari just bolted ahead from 5th and 7th to 2nd and 3rd. Another duo making quick progress were Gasly and Verstappen, who dispatched both Hülkenberg and Lindblad, landing in points-paying positions. We've had 4 laps of great racing between Verstappen, Hülkenberg, both Haas's and both Alpines, but sadly the race director missed almost all of it. None of the drivers willing to give up easily, and all of them kept a safe distance while racing. I know that big portion of it was just battery state management, but it was still thrilling to see 6 cars in such close proximity just battling it out for all the points available below the first 4 positions. Eventually it was Berman on top, with Nico closing the 10. Back at the front, Leclerc and Hamilton had a great scrap on their own, giving me a little heart attack as they were very close to one another, but all in all it was fair and without contact. The only problem is that it allowed Russell to attack from 4th, and soon the Brit got through both Lewis and Charles. But while these 3 had their kerfuffle, young Kimi was just getting away, giving himself an 8-second lead, hoping to hold on to it until the end of the race. Meanwhile, just outside of points, our only rookie this year had a little spin in the hairpin. Nothing serious, but just another avoidable mistake, costing Arvid a lot of confidence. Oh, speaking of, Esteban Ocon had way too much of it as he tried overtaking Franco Colapinto, but he lost it even before getting the move done and hit the side of Argentinian, causing them both to spin. At least he won an award consisting of a 10-second penalty. He has been collecting a lot of those in recent years, so here's another one to the collection. Charles Leclerc had a huge lockup going into the hairpin of turn 14, which Hamilton used immediately to bring us back into the Ferrari war territory. Again, full of respect and close wheel-to-wheel action. The Monegasque even noting on the radio that he's having a lot of fun with it, which I love to see. Ultimately, it was the 7-time world champion coming out on top, giving us a moment to check what was going on in the pit stops. And in the pit stops, big news! Alonso retired. Not like overall, just from the race. Sorry, that sounded awful. But I'm getting used to it though. A rare sight as we saw Haas engineer using bolt cutter of sorts to get rid of loose bodywork on Esteban's car after he served his penalty. And possibly the most important of the 3 instances, Verstappen losing all power, forcing an early retirement. That put Sainz into the points, and if you know Carlos well, you know he was going to get them home. With a few laps to go and no battles on the track, everyone focused on Antonelli leading the way and doing what Vettel did almost 20 years ago. The Italian gave everyone a little scare as he almost fumbled the victory 3 laps before the finish, but the only person who could really deny him his first win was himself. And that battle was won long time ago when he made it to Formula 1. Kimi officially became a race winner, ahead of his teammate Russell and his idol Lewis Hamilton. This one did feel a lot better for the teenager, as he even shed tears of joy during his post-race interview. Many didn't expect him to take the win. Even the announcer called him Raikkonen, which I think is only fitting. He might be a new world champ someday. Okay, let me quickly sum up the top 5 and bottom 5 of this race before you go off doing your own thing. I don't think the weekend was any fun for Max Verstappen. In both the sprint and race, he instantly got swallowed by the field after qualifying 8th in both. And while he made a great recovery in sprint and finished just seconds outside of points, his race ended with an issue completely depriving him of any points. I don't really need to tell you more about Esteban Ocon than I did during the race, but I will. What I think stings the most is that he was never competitive this weekend, at least not to the level that his teammate presented. Esti Besti got eliminated in SQ2 and Q2, brought no points, and he got himself in trouble for driving into the side of Colapinto. And worst of all, he finished behind Valtteri in a Cadillac. Truly a weekend to forget for him. After a spectacular performance in Australia, Arvid Lindblad arrived in China with high hopes. Or so I would think. None of the sessions he took part in was particularly fun or successful. Issue in free practice, didn't manage to knock out the Red Bulls in both qualies despite the door being wide open, and spun on his own in both the sprint and the race. From a very strong debut to a rather depressing race 2 is one hell of a swing. Lastly, I'm gonna place both McLaren drivers in one segment, as they were both having a solid weekend up until Sunday. I'd argue it hurt Oscar more, as he didn't start a race yet this season. He's not having a great time, that's for sure. None of the cars starting the race for a top team, especially for a current constructor champ and drivers champ, is a huge blow and tons of potential points missed. But where someone misses points, someone else brings them home, and that's exactly a story for Carlos Sainz. I took a closer look at his weekend, and it's not like he just got lucky. He qualified 17th for both sprint and the race, and in both of those he only moved forward, finishing sprint on 12th and race on 9th, scoring first points for Williams this year. Good job, Carlos. Pierre Gasly had a very good weekend too, I think. He may have lost out in the sprint, but other than that, he was never outside of top 10, which I think is pretty strong showing. Him keeping pace with the McLarens meant that when they suffered, he was first in line to take their spot, and in all fairness, you have to give the guy credit for that. Solid points for Alpine should keep them pleased. When your rookie teammate scores points and you don't, there's a lot more pressure on your shoulders, especially when you drive for a Red Bull branded team. That's what happened to Liam Lawson, and he more than delivered in China. Better time in both qualifying formats, great pace through the weekend, and points scored in both sprint and race. This is exactly what should give Liam a lot of confidence going further. Oliver Behrman delivered a much better performance than his teammate. Sure, he could have been a little bit more on point in qualifying, but he successfully defended that 1 point in sprint from Max Verstappen and moved through the field in the race to score a P5 finish and 10 points for Haas. He now sits comfortably at P5 in Drivers' Championship, while Haas is in front of Red Bull, all of it being his doing, which must feel great. But probably not as good as winning your first Formula 1 race. Kimi Antonelli proved me wrong when 2 years ago I said it's too early for him. I was a denier. I was the naysayer Toto Wolff didn't listen to. Good. Good, because now we have a new record in history books and a competition for George Russell's championship run. Wonderful job by Kimi overall. We now have to wait and see if he keeps this run going and makes a serious bid for the World Championship title. More on that after Japan, I'm sure. But for now, I gotta go. See ya!